And joining me now on the show, welcome back to Josh Bernstein. Hi, Josh.
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be back on the program with you.
Really appreciate your time today. And this is going to be an interesting discussion because we're going to talk about a subject, a person, Julian Assange today. And the American government is not a fan. But here in Australia, we've got politicians from all parts of the political spectrum, independents, Greens, Labor, and Liberal Nationals, who are all coming out saying that they want to get to the US this month and make the case for Julian Assange. What is your take on this story?
Well, it is interesting. It's an interesting development. Obviously, Julian Assange recently was turned down, in the UK courts, and he's quote unquote dangerously close to being extradited to the United States. Let's hope that that doesn't happen. But here's my whole thought here. I mean, this poor man has paid his dues. I mean, he has literally been incarcerated and or confined since 2012. I mean, we're talking 11 years of either jail or confinement. I mean, he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, of course, for many, many years. And then, of course, Rafael Carrera was thrown out of office through corruption. And then, they brought in a new person. And now I believe there's the Ecuadorian AOC that is going to be a disaster for Ecuador. But that's a story for another day. And so now he's in the Bullmarsh prison in the UK. He's been there since April of 2019. What did he do that was so bad? I mean, a lot of times with the left, they will say, oh, you release this information and it's bad for national security. That's their cover to keep the people around the world, America, elsewhere, Australia, other places, in the dark. They want you in the dark. They don't want you to know these things. But let's face it, Wikileaks, Vault 7 in particular, and the Podesta files really kept America and, quite frankly, for the rest of the world from having to deal with Hillary Clinton. I mean, it basically torpedoed, for all intents and purposes, her chances. So I think Americans are internally and externally grateful for what Julian Assange did. I mean, he showed a lot of different things. He showed the craziness of John Podesta and some of the weird things that he was into. But more importantly, it showed the corruption in the DNC. We saw clearly that they stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders, not once, but twice. They did that to him. They paid him off with houses and cars and all kinds of stuff. And then, of course, Seth Rich. Clearly, Seth Rich, I believe, was taken out by the forces that be. I mean, WikiLeaks Vault 7 had certain documentation in it that talked about, quote, wet works. Wet works is, code for assassination. So I think that there's a lot of information out there that he was able to, expose. And again, myself, you, many other people, many other hosts on this great network, we are the disinfectant. We are that can of Raid that is going to continue to, get these people out of the shadows, and we're going to bring them into the sunlight. And so I think he's paid his dues, quite frankly, and I hope that they do not extradite him to the United States.
We are Australian parliamentarians, and we're calling on the government of the United States to drop the unprecedented Espionage Act charges against Julian Assange.
And we're imploring the British government to release him from prison and send him home.
Like politicians in the US and the UK, we are elected to defend our citizens' rights.
Voters expect us to hold accountable those who commit wrongdoing, not to punish those who expose it, such as Julian Assange.
Citizens expect us to protect journalists and publishers, not to imprison them for their work.
Julian Assange is right now being arbitrarily detained in the UK for publishing activity.
His treatment violates the Convention Against Torture, and its persecution threatens journalists worldwide.
The world's leading human rights and press freedom groups are unequivocally denouncing the charges against him, and we join them.
Australian citizens want Julian Assange to be free.
Indeed, one of the largest petitions in Australia's history, with over 500,000 signatures, has been tabled in the Australian Parliament, calling on the United States to free Assange.
The ruling by UK District Judge Vanessa Barretzer on January the 4th of this year to deny extradition provides the opportunity for urgent reconsideration.
President Biden, we implore you, please drop the US government's appeal in light of the judgment rendered in the UK.
And when Assange, who maintains that he's just working as a journalist, refuses to give up his sources, and many people thought that Seth Rich was his source. The price that he's paid here, with more than a decade behind bars in the worst of conditions, has to be testimony to the integrity of this man trying to put, as you said, the disinfectant, the sunlight onto these stories here. And it's one thing, isn't it, to hide behind national security and say that this is the reason why that this has to be protected. But it's already out there. These secrets are well known there, and all they do is expose the criminality and the shenanigans of the US government. Surely to goodness this is enough for them to say, you know what, we have to move on from here, Josh.
You know, they hide behind the national security argument when they don't want this type of information to get out to everybody else. And quite frankly, to let other countries, including many of our allies, know exactly what we are doing to them as well. You know, the spying programs that we found out through, of course, the PRISM program under Edward Snowden and things of that nature. And so I think that we need more investigative journalists out there, not less. We need more sunlight, not less sunlight. And we need to continue to do these types of things because, again, the only way you weed out corruption is to expose it. And so I think he's a hero for what he has done. He saved America, as I said, and the world from Hillary Clinton for 4 years. So, you know, President Trump was at least a reprieve away from globalism and more for nationalistic ideologies and principles and values that are pro-America or America first principles. And so we'll see what happens in 2024. But the bottom line is this man has been incarcerated and or confined already for 11 years. I mean, he doesn't deserve any more punishment. He should be completely exonerated and he should be let out of prison.
Now, Josh, an important part here is the incoming misinformation, disinformation laws that are being thrown all around the world, and even here in Australia. They're quite harsh. And the idea is that the media, the journalists, work to keep the government in check, to scrutinise what they're doing. Should these misinformation laws be in place, they will defend mainstream news, but people who are outside of that, who are taking on the entire system, are in fact the targets of this. Assange likely to be at the apex of this pyramid of independent journalism. Does that concern you, or do you think that this Assange awareness may well be the thing that breaks the camel's back in terms of these misinformation laws hopefully being struck down before they come into law?
That's a great question. And obviously I don't have a crystal ball, nor do I have a definitive answer as to what will happen. I will tell you this, that here in the United States of America, just as you may know, in Australia and elsewhere, they are cracking down on our right to freedom of speech, and they are censoring us. I'm certainly censored. I mean, you know, I have 14 levels of security on my website in order to make myself be able to have a voice and be able to speak. And that should not be, especially not in the United States of America. So clearly, this is a one-sided type of situation. In my country, I call the media, I actually call them prostitutes. Because technically that's what they are. They will prop up the establishment. They will prop up, you know, the politicians. They will protect the politicians, and they admit that they do it. That's the thing. The journalistic integrity and impartiality has never been there for at least the last 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years. And so when people come at it like myself, that doesn't have huge corporate sponsors, that doesn't have any type of agenda, I always say the truth has no agenda and neither do I. That's why I am so dangerous to the folks that want to keep me quiet. But that's why I'm also loved, as you are and many others are, because the alternative media is now the main media. We are taking over and we are able to get that message out there. It can be difficult. It can be hard with big tech censorship and things like that. But through our networks and through our friends and through other conservatives, you know, even around the globe, we can help each other out. I mean, I'm one of the people that helped start the truckers convoy in Canada. I actually put out an article in September of the year before, and I said, truckers have enormous power. They ought to exert that power. All they would have to do is basically turn off their trucks for 30 days. Now, they kind of changed it and they said they're going to turn off their trucks and then they were going to blockade things. That wasn't anything part of the plan. You didn't even have to do that. You could have just turned the trucks off, and within 45 to 60 days, I mean, things things would be at the negotiating table pretty darn quickly, let's face it. And so that was kind of my idea. I was attacked by the Canadian Parliament on my own website because of that information being out there. So, you know, there are dangers with the things that we do, but we cannot live in fear, and we have to continue to fight to expose these folks and always tell the truth, you know, and that's the most important part. And that's the part that they don't want. They don't want people like me and you and many others to actually be brave enough to tell people the truth. And that's what puts us in danger.
Absolutely, and no one needs to be a journalist and serve 11 years behind bars simply for realising or revealing the truth and being the conduit of free information to the rest of the world. Josh Bernstein, thanks for your time today on World Series News.
Thank you. God bless.